How do you get out of a temporary peace, temporary happiness and joy? That's the key. Like, so it's easy to get in that cycle, right? We'll acknowledge that. Like, it's easy to get in that cycle and that mentality, but how do you get out of it? If I can live in a way where, like, I mean, imagine a life where you could have joy all the time. I mean, that's amazing, right? That's the kind of life we want to live and we want to work towards. So how do we get that?
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the show. I'm Larry Davis, and this is The Growth State of Mind. And today I'm having a conversation with Robert Bass. And we're going to talk about how to live a life full of joy and peace and love. And so all things that we strive to live for and to strive to achieve in our lives, but sometimes it's difficult. My guest is Robert, and Robert is a husband, he's a dad, he's a pastor, author, podcaster, and he's also an entrepreneur. And so we're going to talk to him today because he is dedicated to encouraging others through the Word of God. And so his passion is to help people grow and to fulfill their potential. And so without further ado, welcome to the show, Robert Bass. What's going on, Robert?
Hey, great to be on here and looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it too, man. Like I said, we're going to talk about how to live a life full of love and joy and peace, right? And those are all things that a lot of us chase after. A lot of us chase after those things in a positive direction, and a lot of us chase after those things in a negative direction. And even in the negative directions, it still boils down to one thing: we are trying to find that peace and trying to find joy, even if we're going about it the wrong way, right? And but I know that I'm a believer that it's hard to. Well, I've realized this. It took me some time to come to this realization, but I had to come to the realization that in order to figure out how to have those things in my life, I first got to find out, okay, what is my purpose for even being here, right? And that's the $1 million question that a lot of people ask, like, what is my purpose? And I don't know if you agree or not, but like, do you agree that you have to kind of know why you're here in order to even experience those things, the love, joy, and the peace? Like, what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of us are chasing our purpose, whether we even know it or not. And for me, it comes back to our identity. Like, we're chasing who we are, or we're trying to find out who we are. A lot of times our identity is connected to our purpose. But, Larry, what I've seen a lot of people make that mistake in running after their purpose is they think that their purpose is an achievement or a goal or this thing that I'm going to get to do one day. Oh, when I do this, then I am in my purpose, that I am doing my purpose. But really, like I said, it begins with identity, like who you are. And so my life changed when I began to realize that my purpose is actually through my relationship with God. You see, when I am connected to God, then my purpose has a lot of opportunities to grow. Like, I'll give you a practical example. I feel like I am doing my purpose just as much having this conversation with you as I am, being a pastor on a stage, helping somebody in different seasons of life. Even when I'm at the grocery store, I feel like I'm doing my purpose. Why? Because all of it is connected through my relationship with God. And so when that's the case, oh man, it frees me. I am free to do all kinds of things versus just constantly chasing that purpose and dream.
Yeah, and I think sometimes when we're in the chase or the pursuit of something, we are actually achieving the opposite. Like, if we're chasing something to try to find peace, it ends up not giving us peace. Like, right? Yeah. We ended up it becomes more stressful. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, I don't. And why do you think that is? Like, why is it more stressful? If we are honestly, because a lot of people have genuine hearts and are genuinely trying to find their way in life, and they're generally trying to have peace. And sometimes, yeah, albeit outside of God, right? But they're genuinely trying. They're good people, and they're genuinely trying. And so for those people, like, what do you say to that? When you're trying to find peace, but it becomes more stressful, you know.
Yeah, it because it's temporary, right?
Okay.
Like you can achieve like happiness, but that's temporary. That's circumstantial. You can achieve peace, but then a problem comes and your peace is gone. And so it's that never-ending striving, you know. It's always the new shiny car syndrome, right? You get the new car, 1 year later, it's the old model. It's not that nice, shiny, brand new thing anymore. So it's constantly having to have like a cycle in a rotation that keeps you in a loop that just never ends. And so if it's never going to end, then how can you find the thing that will last forever, that we can depend on, versus, oh, the next year, or I'm just living moment to moment, year to year, promotion to promotion. How do I get out of that cycle, you know, of being stuck in that? Yeah, you can have peace for a little while, but when something happens, you're back at it again.
Okay, so it sounds like the I guess the foundation of where you're trying to find that peace is what's missing, because if you, like you said, if you try if you if it sounds like it comes down to hope, and if your hope is in something that's temporary, uh like a lot of things on earth, then you are going to keep scrambling, because the goalpost is going to move, that thing is going to change. You know, there's going to be new things to, like, it's like go like, you know, I'm not rich, but I hear people after they get rich, they say, well, I thought I was going to feel good when I got this amount of money, and then I didn't, and so I had to go after the next amount, the next tier, right? And they just keep, they don't find that peace, right? Because their peace is anchored in something tangible, right?
Yeah.
Instead of in God, you know.
Absolutely. And that's
Yeah.
easy, right? I mean, if we can be honest, that's easy to get that kind of mindset. You know, we're kind of taught that from the beginning, you know, since we're born, we're taught to achieve things, go after stuff. So it's easy to get in that cycle, right? We'll acknowledge that. Like it's easy to get in that cycle and that mentality, but how do you get out of it? You know, how do you get out of a temporary peace, temporary happiness and joy? That's the key. Like if I can live in a way where, like, I mean, imagine a life where you could have joy all the time. I mean, that's amazing, right? That's the kind of life we want to live and we want to work towards. So how do we get that? That's a great, you know, conversation.
Yeah, yeah. And I believe that's found nowhere but in Jesus Christ, you know. Is So let's get a little tactical here. So as far as, okay, we talked about you know, having a life full of love, joy, and peace, right? Okay, let's get a little tactical. Let's start with love, right? Um, what does that actually look like to live a life of love? Like, what is that? Is that love for, is that loving somebody? Is that having a lot of love in your life, like having a lot of people that love you? Is it like what is it, and how do you get that?
Yeah. So obviously, me being a pastor and a Christian, I'm a lot of my basis is going to be from the Bible, you know. So for anybody out there that's even thinking through a different lens, like you're going to have to get these answers from somewhere, right? Where do you get your morality from? Where do you get your right and wrong from? For me, that's God. That's the Bible. And so, for me, when we talk about love, right? Love in the Bible, there's actually 8 different words in the Bible used to describe love. So right there off the bat, you know, Larry, I'm like, wow, like maybe I don't really know what love is. You know,
Mm.
if God has this broad way of describing love, you know, we got one word in the English language, and so we kind of encompass everything. We package it all in. So love could mean 1,000 different things to different people, but the Bible really begins to break down love in a way that we may not really be used to. And so, you know, in Galatians 5, God uses that word love. It's agape love. It's a unconditional kind of love. And you can even read a little more about it in 1 Corinthians 13. It kind of unpacks like love is patient, love is kind, love does not boast. And so you kind of, as you begin to really learn and dive into that word love, agape love, what you'll see, it's separated from feelings. And that's a lot different than how we navigate love, isn't it? And so you like love is patient. Well, my feelings have a much different story than patient when I think about love. And so you begin to really unpack, you got to wrestle with it. Like you really do. You got to say, wow, I've got to check myself to see if I'm being a loving person through that filter, right? And instead of, I had my dad tell me this one time, it really impacted my life. I was asking, I was like, hey, I'm trying to help this person, right? They needed something. And I was like, I'm going to do this. This is how I think I should help them. And my dad said, Robert, why don't you ask how they need to be helped? And it kind of just blew me away. Like I'm like, wait a second, I'm gonna ask them how they want me to help them. This kind of felt backwards. But what it began to do in my life is it began to open my eyes to say maybe the way I think is right or good, maybe not, might not be the best thing. Like if someone's sick and I'm gonna send them food, I could send them some food that they could be allergic to, right? Or they don't even like, so they won't even eat it. That's not going to do them any good. And so love kind of goes after it a little deeper to say, hey, how can I really help you? How can I dig in and say, what is going to benefit your life instead of being so focused on how things are going to benefit my life and the way I feel about it? So you kind of begin to see that love separate, and God really begins to dive into love on a much deeper way.
Okay, so is that what is that kind of what happens like in relationships where a person say, you know, I loved you, I did this, I did that, and I guess the other person doesn't see it, right? And the other
Yeah.
person is like, you know, and that the one person is like, well, I did all these things for you,
Yeah.
you know, I loved you, and you didn't you didn't even receive it, you didn't, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that's a good thing. What you say, what your father said is like, you know, did you even ask them, right?
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, uh so if a person is just, you know, trying to find that love, like say, I guess you, what you're saying is, first of all, you got to kind of have a better understanding of what love is, because if you have a wrong understanding of what love is, then you're missing the point of it all, and you are going to feel like that you're not living a life of love, right? If you
Yeah.
don't, if you don't really, if you don't understand it,
Yep.
is
Yeah,
the, am I
exactly.
getting that right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I said, like, where do you get your definitions from? You
Okay.
know, like, how do you define something is so important. And so, because that's going to determine a lot in your life. So if I let the Bible determine what love is, then I'm going to go down a much different path, right? Than other ways of telling me, oh, love's a feeling. Or love, I can't tell you how many times people tell me, well, I felt out of love. Okay, well, you won't see that in the Bible, though. Like, love is a commitment. The Bible uses the word covenant, right? And so God has made a covenant with us, which means that he's going to stand by his agreement. Now, I don't know about you, but I want God to stand by his agreement when he says, if I trust him, I go to heaven. Like, that's important. That's an important agreement. I want him to stand by, not like, well, I don't really feel, Robert, you didn't really do this or do that way. No, that would bring a lot of anxiety and fear in my life if the God I serve was kind of back and forth. But no, God says, this is love. This is my loyalty to you. Much different than how we define love as feelings.
Yeah. Yeah. So what if, well, let me ask you this. So what if I recognize, okay, I recognize how to live a life of love, and I think I know the answer to this question. But if I recognize that, and I recognize what love is from a biblical perspective, what God says about love, but the people around me don't, or even the person that I'm closest to, like even, you know, my spouse, if they don't really understand it, but I understand it, and I'm trying to live that way, but the people around me don't really understand it. Can I really live a life of love without them understanding it, but I understand it? Like what do you think?
Yeah. So one of the things that I even talk to my son about, my son's 13, is I tell him, look, God's going to hold you accountable for your actions, right? And so that is important for us to embrace is God is telling us to be the example. Like this is actually a big story in the Bible where, Jesus comes to the world and demonstrate what it's like. to do the right thing. And now he's entrusting us to image him well. And so that's the beautiful part of the story, is like you and me, we're actually meant to show other people what God's like, what love is like. And that's a big part of the story. And so I need to know what love is like if I'm going to do that well. So yeah, it's tough. I mean, that you bring you bring up a tough question, right? It's that wrestle that we're gonna face. I mean, be honest, some people who say that they follow Jesus don't love well, you know, while it seems like some people who don't even go to church at all and don't proclaim Jesus as their Lord, they seem to love better than other people do, right? But at the end of the day, like, how does God telling us to love? That's that key filter for us.
Yeah, yeah. I've realized, and like you said, some people who don't don't even know God or don't love God love well. I believe that whether you follow God or not, if you follow His principles, you're gonna have some level of success, right? Or other people are gonna feel it if you follow His principles, even if you don't know you're following them. But no, so yeah, you're right, and I believe that. Uh, like you said, like you told your son, we're responsible for what we do, and I believe that if we understand love, and we're exhibiting and displaying love the proper way, eventually other people will find out, or at worst, we are rewarded in heaven, or we're rewarded by God,
Yeah.
for our good works. So at worst, and I guess you just got to know, you got to be firm and be anchored in what the Word of God says, to know that He is not going to forget your labor of love, right? He's not going to forget the good works that you are doing. And it's hard. It's hard because I know I can start off doing the right thing, but then when I don't get it reciprocated back, I'm like, I wanna do what you're doing to me back to you, But
Yeah.
but we gotta, stay anchored and grounded in the Word of God. And which leads me to the next question, because if I think, when we talk about joy, uh one reason that we may not be experiencing the joy is because we're looking outside of ourselves and looking at what other people are doing, or looking at the circumstances, instead of just looking at, I'm loving the people the way I'm supposed to. And when we do, like I was saying, when we try to look at another person and say they're not loving me back like I'm loving them, then that steals our joy, right? And so let's talk about joy, because I know that joy is misunderstood. I just know it is, by a lot of people. So let's talk about, first of all, what is joy? Like, what is it?
Yeah. So, joy define if you just looked up the definition of joy, you'd probably get something like it's a delight, like to be delighted or pleasant in a situation. That's probably a Webster dictionary of joy. But biblical joy actually has to do with like a fullness. Like I am full of this pleasure, this overwhelming sense of fulfillment, okay? And so joy and happiness begin to separate, right? The more you dig in, you'll start to see joy and happiness branch off, and they get further and further when you dive in. Because what'll happen is happiness is really defined by what happens in a situation. Okay. So my football team won, or my sports team won. So I'm happy. Okay. But joy is something you experience in a situation, in spite of the circumstance, in spite of what's happening. And so joy is internal, while happiness is external.
Mhm.
Okay. So again, the more you dive into this, you'll get to see that they get further and further away, and they're not the same. But a lot of times we confuse it, because we'll have moments of joy, right? Like when you see someone yelling because their sports team won, you think that they're having joy in that moment. But true joy is when life's not going good, when I'm in the hospital, right? Because I've been in the hospital through motorcycle accidents. It's when I'm in the hospital and I can still laugh. It's when the situation that I'm in says nothing about it should be happy, but yet I still have that. And so joy is really that internal state in a situation versus happiness is surrounded by the external or circumstance.
Okay, okay, and I like the way you broke that down, um, because yeah, it is a difference, and a lot of us don't know the difference between the two. At one point in my life, I didn't know the difference between the two. I had to learn that, um, but I understand it now, and and when you see, like, we can, when you see someone who is strong in that, strong in their faith and enjoy, you can kind of see that, and people kind of wonder, like, what is that, like, how how are they like that, where do they get that from?
Yeah.
And like, what would you say, like, where does it come from, where does that joy come from?
Yeah, again, it's coming from your identity, like who you are who you were created to be. Really, is where you're operating from. And so, my joy doesn't come from hope in the moment. My joy comes that I know God is going to help me through it. And so, in spite of my situation, I have hope, and hope makes a massive difference. I mean, my wife is a nurse, and so she's in the medical world, and there's been studies that show that can prove when someone believes something, right? When they believe it, that their chance of surviving any kind of sickness jumps up dramatically. I'm not talking about 1-2%, I'm talking about 10 to 20%. People have been healed of cancer and different things and survive things just because they have hope in a situation. And so that we should study that more. We should press into what is happening when someone has a greater hope than their current situation. Like, and a lot of doctors will just chalk it up. Oh, we can't explain it, or it was a miracle, whatever they want to say. But science has proven there's something there. Like, statistically, something happens and can happen inside of you even though you may be going through something that is very traumatic and very different. And so, hey, look, if I can have hope in spite of the crazy things happening in this world, sign me up.
Yeah, me too, yeah, definitely. uh because we want that joy, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And because listen, I think that's the only thing that's going to get you through this life, is that
Hmm.
having that joy on the inside of you when things are tough. I think for me, uh I really understood that I really understood that I had a joy during the pandemic. That's when I
Hmm.
really, for me, it really, I affirm, it was affirmed in myself. And I was like, wow, because I see how other people were, and obviously it was a, you know, traumatic experience, right?
Hmm.
And people were dying, and we had to, everything was shut down, and people didn't know what to do, and it was all kinds of things, people losing their jobs, and people, you couldn't see your loved ones, and all those things. And I know it was very traumatic. However, I had this joy inside. Actually, I had what I want to talk about next. I had peace. That's what I had.
Yeah.
That's what I had. And so let's talk about peace, because um I had this sense of peace within me, and I couldn't explain it. I probably should have been like other people and panicking, but I didn't. And but I had a lot of peace. And so, where does this peace come from? And for people who want to have peace, like, how do they create it? Like, where does it come from, and how do they create it,
Yeah.
or can you create it?
Yeah, it's great. And I completely agree with you. I mean, I think the pandemic was a great example. I just saw there was so much fear, just so much fear going around. I mean, toilet paper was gone. It's just so many things were just crazy gone because of fear, really. It boiled down to fear. And so, even in my own life, right, I had to challenge myself to say, am I going to operate that way? And this is what is interesting about what we're talking about is we have a choice. Like we have a choice if we're going to choose to go down this kind of path. Like, do I want circumstantial joy or happiness, or do I want the real thing that's not going to fade? And so we kind of have a choice in these paths, and that choice comes down to our relationship with God, because we know we can only, as humans, as people, we can only strive to do so much. You can look through history and you can see we're only gonna accomplish so much. And the reason that's so important is because, you know, God's everlasting, and that is something that if we want everlasting peace, if we want a peace that's not going to change, then we need to tap into a source that's not going to change. This is what I love about the characteristics of God, right? So what we're talking about is called the fruit of the Holy Spirit. Like this is kind of the subject, and what it's saying, it's a fruit of God's presence. So I know that God is ruling in my life. I know that my life is imaging God well when I see these things. So while everybody else is being fearful, I have peace. Well, how does, you know, Robert and Larry have peace? Well, it's not because of us, because we should be fearful, right? We should be fearful because the world is falling apart and getting crazy. But how do we have this peace? Well, it's through the presence of God. Like that's the simplest answer. Is I can have peace the more I'm tapped into the presence of God. But when I'm not tapped into his strength and his hope, then I've got to operate out of what I can do. And then it comes down to that, like, okay, I can do it for a little bit, right? We can do about anything for a little bit, even if it's a job we don't like, or, you know, gym or whatever it would be. We can do anything for a little bit. But the problem is that it fades. And so I want that peace that is going to last even in spite of problems.
Yeah, yeah. Man, you're right. And you, like you said, that you know that peace comes from God, and people are trying to find it everywhere. People are trying to find it in everything. People are trying to find it in their cars, in their homes. They're trying to find it in money, right?
Yeah,
Trying to find it in other people. You know, even people are trying to find it in their spouse. You know what I mean? Trying to find
yeah.
peace in their spouse, and it's not going to work. It's not going to work. You got to. That comes from God, like you said.
I know. You know what
Yeah.
else, Larry? If I can jump in and say this, like I've made the mistake, and I see other people's making the same mistake too, is we think we'll get peace when we get away from the problem. Okay, all right. I'll have peace when I got money. So when I'm not broke, when I'm away from being broke, then I will have peace. Or we could name this all day. When this problem, who's this person's mean to me, and they're calling me names or whatever it would be, when they are away from me, then I'll have peace. See, that's the teaching we've got to get away from, because that's that escapism mentality. I'm trying to escape. I'm trying to get away, or I'm trying to get away from my problems. This is why we like vacation so much,
Mhm.
because we want to get away from our problems. And there's nothing wrong with vacations, right? But the problem with the vacation is you still take yourself there. So you're still taking all of your problems and who you are, that's still going on vacation with you. And so this escapism mentality is this never-ending circle we've been talking about. As long as you live in that, or we live in that circle and that cycle of I'm going to get away from my problems, I'm going to run away, we're never going to find true peace that lasts. But the good news is it's available.
Yeah, it's available. Yeah, yeah. Man, that's so good. That's so good. Uh, as we get ready to draw to a close here, you got a book called Hidden Fruit, right? So tell us about the book.
Yeah. So the book Hidden Fruit's about the fruit of the Holy Spirit, what we kind of been talking about, which is love and joy and peace and patience and goodness and self-control, right? We all need a little self-control to not eat those desserts during the holidays. But really, it's helping us. How do we live this way? Kind of along the conversation we about to have. Okay, I want peace, but how do I get it and how do I keep it? The book really dives into more practical things like we've been discussing on how do I live with peace. And, spoiler alert, it's all connected through our relationship with God. And that's where we're going to find that everlasting peace. But I do share some practical things in there and some stories on how to live that out every single day.
Okay. All right. So, well, hey, well, tell us how to get the book. Where can we get it from?
Absolutely. I'd like to offer you and your audience a free sample copy. So if they go to hiddenfruitbook.com, and there's some short ebooks in there. So like love, joy, peace, they can kind of pick what they want. And all they got to do is enter the code sample at checkout. So hiddenfruitbook.com, grab one of those short ebooks and hit the coupon code sample.
Okay. All right. And I'll make sure that is in the show description so all of you can go out and get Robert's book, because again, we're all trying to figure this thing out, and all of us want to live a life of joy, peace, and love. And so if it's something that we're all chasing after, but again, there's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it. And I believe that. And so get this book, get it, read it, take advantage of the sample that Robert has given. And I think we can start to find our way through this. Robert, thank you for coming on the show, man. It's been a fun conversation. I'm sure that everyone has learned a lot. And so just let us know, besides the book, let us know how can we connect with you if we want to find out more.
Absolutely. So you can follow me on social media at Robert A. Bass on any of the platforms, and you can get more content like this. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Hey everyone, thanks for watching and listening. Robert, thanks for coming on, man. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it. Great talking with you.
All right. Hey everybody, I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Robert Bass. That's it. That's all I got for this episode. Thank you for tuning in. Listen, if you like the show, please rate it and review. Leave a review in iTunes or Spotify or just wherever you're listening. If you're watching this on YouTube, like it and share it with somebody who you know can benefit from it. And don't forget to subscribe so that you can get the updated episodes when they get released. Thanks again for watching and listening. And remember, let's win in life. In order to do that, you got to keep a growth state of mind.